Hello. I have a little bit of time today. Um, last Yesterday I didn't have much time. I actually was super busy. We needed to finish certain stuff before the day was over, so I was kind of like on call, and I would make some changes, and then needed to make changes immediately right after. Um, but it was worth it. I think what we ended up with was pretty cool. But I realized, oh my gosh, the day's almost over, and then me and my wife hadn't had time to hang out with each other, so I was like, oh, let's go watch a movie. Are you down and get some dinner? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And so we went and saw Sinners. It's funny because I didn't tell her anything about that movie. And she's like, what's the movie about? And I was like, I actually don't want to tell you. I'm curious to what you think of the movie as a complete surprise. And she's not a big fan of horror movies, especially if she's not aware of it. And so it wasn't that horror based. It was more like action horror. Um, but she was not prepared. And so she said she was mad at me, but I don't think she was. I think she was being playful. She was very happy. We had a good time. The movie was good. I liked it a lot. And I think I came into that movie thinking it was going to be the greatest movie ever, though, because a lot of my good friends were like, "This is the greatest movie that ever existed." I saw like 11 out of 10 movie reviews from friends of mine. So I was expecting something crazy, but it wasn't. It was okay. Um, I would like to think that it was probably out of a rating of 10, anywhere from 8 to 8.5. Like I liked it a lot. Um, but yeah, I think it could have still been improved in some areas. Specifically, like the I don't want to get too spoiler with this, but I'll kind of comment on some stuff that I think could have done really well if they would have pushed it further. Um, yeah, just like the stuff with the vampires was pretty cool. I think really playing into that a little bit more. They did a lot of character building in the beginning of the film, which I think they could have been a little bit more economic. And what I mean by this is that in storytelling, you have this opportunity to really make everything matter, and everything counts when trying to communicate ideas. And so you want to try to get those ideas as clear as humanly possible, um, sooner rather than kind of belaboring the point and just like lingering and letting people kind of fester on ideas that might not be meaningful to like the larger story that's being told. And so there's a lot of storytelling and relationship building um that it just felt like they could have sharpened it a bit more. And I don't want to get too spoiler because I actually did like the movie a lot, but I have some ideas of what could have probably been sharpened. Um, and I think it would have been a 10 out of 10 for me specifically. But a lot of other people loved it a lot, and the movie did really well um, on release. So there's a good chance that I just don't know what I'm talking about either. You know, I'm sure the director and writers would not think lightly of that. I think they would absolutely consider what they could have done better. That's what probably makes them good storytellers. And typically, the people that I've met that are incredible at what they do typically are able to parse the difference there. You know, I wanted to talk a lot more about kind of what I talked about in the previous long form video about ego. It was actually surprising. A lot of people really resonated well with it. Now, I did expect that people would have, I do expect a lot of times, regardless of the topic, that people will get something out of what I have to say. Um, I had a buddy who was like, "Who dislikes these videos?" And I was like, "People do. Like, people just don't agree, and that's totally fine." I actually have a principled idea that people are absolutely allowed to disagree with even people that are, well versed and skilled. In fact, that's what makes people better typically. And in that video, I even mentioned how being self aware is an incredibly useful tool, along with like unbridled arrogance. Having this unnecessary confidence um, accompanied with people being able to call you out on it is pretty powerful. And I was thinking about that a lot more because again, a lot of these videos help people, and that one, like, it was like hitting people in a way that I actually should have expected, but I didn't really expect. People were really like, man, like I need to work on my confidence. I absolutely do not feel that I do that. And they understood kind of the heart of what I was getting at. It's not so much that I think people should be pricks and mean and think that they're the greatest people that ever exist on this earth. I'm just saying, like, have a little bit more self value, you know. And I was making the comment about how people who are at least postured as arrogant tend to not let like their insecurities get the best of them. In fact, the opposite tends to happen, right? And this is where I think arrogance tends to get a rightfully critical perspective on most people. Is then it starts to feel like you think you're better than everyone else, and you have no self-awareness. And that to me is the part where it becomes problematic, because then you're not able to grow any further if you think you're already the best and nobody else can give you any more information. You know what I mean? And I think as artists, most artists tend to like there's something about it, like with art, that we take a lot more personal when somebody tells you that they don't like your artwork, right? Because it's more than just a vocation. This is a personal observation of the world when you make art. Like, this is what you think is interesting and your opinion about things, that are cool to you. And if other people give you some feedback and criticism on that, even if it's warranted, it's under the veil of employment, it can come off as a personal attack. And that's why I think it's such a hard thing to recognize. I was watching this video, or just this TV series. It's about the U.S. basketball team. Actually, I don't know if it's about the U.S. specifically. I think it was just about all the basketball teams that went to compete in the Olympics last year in Paris. And it really kind of compounded something that I've been saying in the previous video, and made me think about even a better way to kind of frame why I think, quote unquote, arrogance is a more effective tool. Again, not stepping on anyone else, but this idea of like feeling like you could do whatever you can do, because it was very front and center with all of these athletes. Like almost every single athlete was like, there was this one actually that he was hilarious, because he would be watching people play other sports like ping pong, and he was talking to like the female table tennis, like Olympic level athletes, and he was saying to their face, like, no way you're gonna, like, no way am I not gonna score a point. I'm gonna score 1 point. I'm gonna score 1 point. So he acknowledged that he would lose. So he was humble enough to know that, okay, I'm not going to be able, like, these are elite. Like, he had that respect for other elite athletes. But the arrogance to think that he could even score a point, like, maybe he can. But if I had to put money on it, most likely he probably can't. Because these are not just like really good hobbyists. These are the best in the world. They're there to compete against other bests in the world. So these types of individuals are the kinds of people that can shut you out. Again, his sport of choice is basketball. It would be like saying one of those table tennis players could score 1 bucket on him in a 1-on-1. It's like absolutely like unreasonable, but it's playful. Like, I don't think anybody was in there thinking this guy's an asshole. This guy is like the worst. I think he made a comment about like sprinting too. He's like, okay, 100 meters, yeah, you got me beat. But 50 meters, I bet I could beat some of these sprinters. It's just like, I don't know, dude. But nobody, like, I when I was watching this, I was like, this is kind of what I was getting at. Because I'm not watching this and turned off by this. I actually think it's charming. I think it's fun. I think if he was to say there is nobody better than me and everyone else sucks, I think that's a different perspective. But this like unbridled, unreasonable level of confidence wasn't just unique to him. A lot of the other players were posturing this. Like, they're like, "We're the best. Like, oh, nobody's gonna beat us." You know. There was even a moment where the president, the latter president Obama, was asked about like his thoughts about the U.S. team, Olympic team, and he says, "Look, when it comes to politics, I try to be diplomatic. We all got to get along and get along." Um, he's like, "But when it comes to sports, like especially the Olympics, like America's the best. Nobody can beat us in basketball. If we lose in basketball, to be honest, it's going to be embarrassing." And again, it doesn't come off like I think inherently, because the way you hear him talk about it, the way the way he sounds when he says it, it's obvious that he doesn't mean that like truly. It's this kind of like thing that you see in sports where it's a bit of a jib and a jab, where it's of course if America loses, it's not going to be a terrible embarrassment. Like I'm sure people will be like, "Ah, fuck," especially the team might feel a lot of shame, but as a nation, we'd be like, we'll get over it, right? We're not going to be like, "Oh, well, it happens," Like, think that's the beauty of sports, typically, not always. And it made me think about this even further. I was just like, yeah, this is the thing that I tend to do, is that I have this feeling that I can do something, even if I can't, not because I can do it like right now, but the idea that with time and effort I can absolutely do it, or at least get good enough. Maybe I always tell my students this idea of like, you might not be um, you might not be at an Olympic level to compete against the top, you know, 10 athletes, but you might not be at the top 100. But let's say you're so good that you're in the top 500 athletes to compete. That would mean that you are better than the rest of the people on this planet as far as we're concerned, amongst the best. And I say this because it's like with art, like that's all you need to do. You just need to be amongst the best. You don't need to be the top 100, the top 5%, top 10%. Just got to be in the top 20%, and I think you'd be okay. You know? And that video really hit people because I think people recognized this fear of failure and how personal that feels because of art. The thing that we do called art. And when I start to think about some of the greatest athletes and some of the best at what they do, there is a bit of this like confidence, high level confidence and arrogance. Somebody messaged in a comment that, perhaps there's a bit of a semantic thing. And they were trying to redefine it as back to confidence because I think that's fair. But I use ego and arrogance deliberately. Because if you look at the definitions, it's like an over index essentially of your self importance and your self value, essentially. Like you think you're better than you actually are. Like objectively speaking, you are not as good. And I think when I use the word confident, that word means more along the lines of like you do believe you can do this, and there's probably more merit to it. There's more objective truth to like. So, for instance, I am confident I can bench press 225 for 10 reps because I've done it. But it'd be arrogance to think that I could do 315 for 10 reps because I can't do that. But to come into the equation to be like, I can absolutely do that. Hold on. My wife is calling me. I'm going to pause the audio for a second. Give me 1 second. All right, I actually have to go. I I forgot to preface that I might have to bounce at any minute because my wife is waiting for me to help her with the groceries, and she is here. I forgot to preface that. So we'll do the sequel to this, but I'll end this on this note before I come back to the part two. Maybe I'll do it today. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. But the idea that I use these words deliberately is because it's incredibly helpful to use the words as we see to help define specific scenarios. Some words can be too agnostic, too um, indirect. They could be a little bit woo woo, you know. And so I try to like use verbs, nouns, adjectives, things that I think are actually describing what I'm saying to the best of my ability. But at the end of the day, I do agree that there's a bit of semantic wordplay here. And so if there's a better term for what I'm describing, please help me out with that. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is that sometimes it is worth having this overconfidence that is almost unwarranted to allow you to challenge yourself in a way that I don't think you would because you're being more and more conservative. But I do have more thoughts on this, and I actually do want to talk. I want to kind of go beyond this and talk about insecurities. So I'm gonna have to stop here though, because I got to go help out the wife. Maybe I'll after this I'll come back and I'll just edit the two videos together. Honestly, that won't be too hard. I'll just do that. I'll be right back. Yeah, in the spirit of not editing, actually, I just realized I don't want to edit at all. This is gonna too much effort, y'all. So I'm just going to, as soon as I am done, I am just going to upload both videos at the same time. Unless YouTube has some sort of feature that I don't know about, or you can just upload really easily. But I have no interest of opening up an editing software just to put these two videos together. So yeah, definitely lazy, but I do not want to do that. It takes time. Interestingly enough, even though it's all I'm doing is putting two videos together, it takes about anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes at its fastest because just uploading the sources, putting the folders together, just make sure it's organized in case something screws up. And then yeah, just dealing with the R&D of whatever might accidentally happen I didn't realize. Um, Nothing that's hard to do. It's just tedious. And then waiting for it to compile and render. That alone can take 10, 15 minutes because of how massive these files are. And so, I mean, just uploading these videos to YouTube takes 10, 15 minutes, depending on how big the files are. So, yeah, I'm not interested in doing that. So, this will be part two. Hopefully, you saw part one and hopped over from that to this one. Brought in the stuff for the wife. Told the wife I'm going to try to finish this recording in the next 15, 20 minutes. And then I will call it a day. So this would have been one long video, but because of the consequences of being a husband, doing what is needed of me, my husband duties, I am splitting these up to two videos for no other reason other than that. There is no strategy behind splitting it up. Anyway, so I was talking about like the terms like arrogance, right, and ego. So going back to kind of this idea of like these athletes, like I was saying, like how you can rarely do you find some of these athletes that can really become excellent, you know, but they're like super hyper confident, ergo arrogant a lot of times, right? Like super confident, like many of them, some of the greatest, right? Like when you think about the late Kobe Bryant, we don't think about somebody who is just chilling. He's aggressive. There's like a whole video about like montage about him just steamrolling people with his confidence, you know? Um, there's other examples of like, professional athletes in different sports. But then in art, it doesn't fit. And I don't think it needs to. That's why I'm trying to also kind of find an alternative way of thinking about this. Like where you don't see like even someone like myself isn't like I am the greatest artist that has ever lived. I will say this sometimes in my class that I'm like I want to become the greatest artist that ever lived, but I'm always like, but it might take me like 15 more years, maybe 20 years. It might take my entire lifetime to become something like that. But there is a bit of that arrogance that I think that's even possible. And if I even know what that means, because art is at the end of the day a little bit more subjective, and that's the difference there. That it's a bit more subjective. You know, when you are a professional boxer like Mike Tyson, you have this unbridled arrogance. It's because it's usually fueled by the fact that you knocked out like 30 of your opponents in the last 30 matches. Like you have just been undefeated. So it's just like this kind of justified arrogance, because it is pretty open and shut. Like it's not as obvious that you're like this kind of like it's not as subtle. I mean, it's more obvious. Where it's more less obvious and more subtle in the arts. But there is some power to these athletes and these people who are extraordinary by having this kind of vibe. Take someone like musicians, specifically Kanye West. And let me be clear, I do not like Kanye West at all anymore. I think that this person is now out of his mind, needs help, saying some of the craziest shit I've ever heard in my life. Um, but one thing that has never changed, even though he's changed his opinions on lots of different things lately, but one thing that hasn't is his arrogance. He always felt and always still feels that he is the greatest musician of all time. There was a time where I would have followed that. I would have believed this, you know? But he has fell too far off that path in my mind to warrant that. Is he deserving of his great accolades of the works before? Honestly, yeah, I think so. I think he is rewarded some of the greatest music that has ever been made. I think that's fine. But he is absolutely a piece of shit now. And what's interesting about this, though, because I mentioned that there needs to be a bit of a balance, that there needs to be something that is going to complement this arrogance, that will help sort it out. And that was his mother, actually. There's great footage of him with his mom, and there's this awesome quote that his mom told him that sticks with me. And I'm just like, dang, dude, that's fire. Where, he was just talking about how he's the greatest, how he's like the best, in front of his mom, and that like he's just unmatched. And she's entertaining it. She's like, yeah, I agree. Like you're awesome, son. But she said something that I thought was incredibly profound. And this is one of those things that I think absolutely has destroyed Kanye. Is that he didn't have that self-awareness because it was external. He had he doesn't have an internal compass. He has an external one, and it was his mother. Because she would say stuff like this to him when he would do that, like when he would boast his ego like unreasonably. She said to him, son, and I'm paraphrasing, like, you got to be careful, son, because although you're becoming the great and you're becoming an awesome artist, if you become so tall, like a giant, eventually a giant will be so tall that they can't see anyone else eye to eye, and it's lonely when you're that high up, and there's no mirror essentially that you can look into that is tall enough, and that's very dangerous. you know? So basically, calling them out, saying, look, at some point, you will be unable to see how your ego will betray you because you're so big that there's nobody else eye to eye. And as well as, and I think I might have moved this around a little bit, so you might correct me on this one if you guys know the actual thing she said, but it was beautiful. I was like, dang, that's actually incredible. And I can see why and how he may have gotten his poetic voice. Probably from Mama's sage words, dude. These like that was really solid. And what was interesting when I remember watching this, Kanye West listened. He didn't say shit. He just took it all in. And I think he heard her. Like it stuck. At least for the time being. But then she passed away. And like I said, that was his external tool to help him out. Well, listen, that tool's not around. And now he's a megastar when she passes. He's surrounded by yes people. He's surrounded by people that will only validate his feelings that he is the greatest. And it just will never be repaired until he finds somebody else that could balance him out, but he won't let anyone else in now because he has a rightful distrust for people now as well and what they actually believe. And he's made so much money that he believes that he's greater than all, but making money is not a good measure of character. Like I have these types of things in my life externally that have really sharpened my character internally. I'm still best friends with my childhood friend, someone who I've known literally since I was a kid, like 10 years old. And I have my wife that met me when I was nobody, like I literally have nobody. Or I was like, I didn't make any money. I wasn't robot pencil as you know it. I was very much small timer. And so she's been with me since the beginning, and she has always been telling me, like, I'm going to ride with you till the end, She's been with me some of the hardest times in my life, some of the best times, and that will remain true forever and always. I like that we met under those pretenses because it's clear to me that with some prestige that I may accidentally or indirectly lose these types of things if I don't be careful. But I haven't. I've actually been very grateful that a lot of the people that are still around me can call me out on my bullshit. And they have many, many times. And I'm very grateful for this. So I have external forces that help push and pull any kind of ego that might have spawned if it was untethered. Because I definitely have this tendency like, yeah, I can do whatever I want if I put my mind to it. But that's just not true. Like I need external factors to remind me. And I'm at a scale in my life and I have a lot of good external tools that can prevent that from happening. And this is kind of what I wanted to get at. Because the reverse is true. For those of you who have these self-deprecating challenges in your life, if you're feeling constantly at odds with yourself and you're always talking shit to yourself, you might also have external factors that might be contributing to this. One of them could be just seeing the state of the industry, seeing the state of the world. This could be contributing to your negative feelings to yourself. Because it's like, well, what's the point? Everything fucking sucks, right? Because you don't have this internal system of positive vibes. And so you're just constantly surrounding yourself with negative thoughts and feelings and opinions. It is going to continuously feel like I can't stand that. Actually, I remember, I think I talked about this in a previous video, like 2017, I was like the most politically involved and engaged online. It was like the most unproductive year in my entire life. And I was angry all the time. And I don't think that anything that I did in that time was that meaningful anyways in the long term. Like, did I change a lot of people's minds? And did I even care to change people's minds? Or was I just frustrated with what I believed was happening? And it became clear I need to stop. I needed to stop doing that. And then I got back to it and I got a lot more positive. And I find that a lot of people tend to engage in a lot of these external factors that are feeding into the negative parts of their ego, the things that make them feel sad all the time. You know, like I said, it's like a reverse Uno version of whatever Kanye had. He had somebody who was keeping his ego in check, and then when that person passed away, then it didn't. Now look at him; he's crazy, and he thinks that truly nobody knows what they're talking about, and that he's the greatest of all. Like, that's crazy. That's just untrue. No matter if you are great at whatever it is that you're great at, it is just impossible, especially in these subjective fields, to be considered quote unquote the best at anything. Truly, it's really impossible. And so this is true for the reverse. Like I said, oh my god, is my camera broken? I just looked like, oh my god. Let me turn it off, on and off, see what happens. Luckily, I wasn't making too much of a goofy face. That's so funny. I forget that this camera does that from time to time. Let me see if I can. Uh, 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 uh. No, that's so funny. Yeah, let me try this. All right, I'm just gonna turn it off then. It's fine. It is unnecessary. Save my computer some RAM. Um, but yeah, the reverse is true for many of you guys who don't have cheerleaders or people in your life that will support you. And so you're constantly being fueled, whether you're doing it to yourself or external factors are fueling this by negative stuff. Like I said, I couldn't stand, like that year, I couldn't stand it because I know the difference. I know what it's like when I'm not filled with negative thoughts. Like, I'm way more productive. I'm so much happier. I absolutely acknowledge that the world has challenges, but I'm just not always fucking thinking about them because unless I'm actively doing something to change those things that are happening around me, I don't know why I need to be thinking about it every 5 seconds. I do think about it often, and I do get in heated discussions about it. I remember I got in a pretty heated debate about some of the current politics with some people because I still have opinions about it. I just don't consistently and constantly think about this type of stuff, you know? And I don't think anybody really ought to unless that's your job or you're like actively trying to fix some of these things. I think then it matters. But that's just not who I am or where I am at in my life. That's not what I'm doing. And I think that I have a lot of good fail safes to keep my ego in check. This thing that I keep talking about, like this, yeah, I can do it. I can do whatever. Give me a year, you know? And it's just like, and then my friends are like, no, yeah, right. You fucking suck. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're probably right. You know, or jobs don't come because I'm not as good as I thought I was, you know? Like, there's just some things that will keep me in check. My wife will laugh at me if I say some stuff. I remember one time I did tell her, I was like, you know, I think I'm one of the best artists in this business. Like, I think that I'm amongst the best here. And she just started laughing. She's like, you're not the best. I was like, oh my gosh. It's like, I don't mean like I'm the best. I'm just saying how many other artists can paint as fast as me and do this, you know? I was just like trying to be objective about it, but then it still came off as like fucking like I was a piece of shit. And my wife was she knew that I didn't think negatively of other artists. She just thought it was funny that I thought I was some great artist. But, you know, I still think about it from time to time. I'm like, yeah, what does it really mean? But that's the point. Like, my wife made fun of me. And I accepted it. I was like, yeah, you're right, you know? But I wonder, imagine if I had a bunch of people in my life. Like, I would like to think that I could be immune to this. But I don't know, man. Like I think we're all human. We're all seeking validation somehow. And if we don't have healthy tools, like, I think any of us could probably fall victim to them. Truly, I don't think it's as simple as, yeah, just be a good person. Like, there are things that make good people do bad things all the time. And I am always worried that some people don't realize that this is happening to you as well from the other end, which is that you are fueling these insecurities even more than you realized, you know? And it is an appropriate strategy to find solutions to this, to make sure that you are surrounding yourself more and more with external factors that are helping you so that you can train your internal factors to start to have a better radar and catch yourself from being in a death spiral, mentally speaking. You know, I'll leave you with this one last story. And I realize I think I can probably edit these two videos. I was kind of talking about not wanting to do that, but now I'm thinking about it. I was like, yeah, I could just let the rendering, like I have time. Like the day is not, like I have a lot of time actually. I can just let the shit kick in the background. It's really not that big of a deal, to be honest, the more I think about it. Um, but there's this story I want to tell, or this idea that I want to talk about when it comes to what this is like. I had a friend who was an addict to drugs. They they grew up in a pretty terrible environment. I knew because I was around during that time. Like we all grew up in this small town and it wasn't the best. And this person went to rehab a couple times because of their drug addiction. And every time they would go to rehab, they would come back essentially cured. They were not addicted to drugs anymore. And so makes a good case for rehab, right? Like this person was able to go, they got the help they needed, and they reformed, and now they're on the right path, right? But then, like a year or so goes by, and they become an addict again. So it makes you think, well, I guess rehab didn't work. Like rehab never works then, right? Like people will have that extreme. Well, that's just not the way to think about these types of things. You have to think about a lot of these things as like a leaking faucet problem. What is causing the faucet to leak in the first place? You know, why did she become a drug addict? Well, the environment in which we grew up in, like one of the reasons why I left, it's just not the best. Many people in that small town become drug addicts. It's very likely. Many people fall victim to drugs and crime and all that stuff because that place is just not the best environment. You know? I think it was fun and fine growing up as a child, but live there as an adult, I feel like it's a bit of a dead end. And unless you have a really good support system out there, you are going to run into some really extreme challenges to try to overcome. It's not true for everyone that lives out there. I have lots of friends who do just fine. I want to make it clear, like it's not like um, a sure thing. It's just very likely. I know more people who have fallen off the path that still live there than people who have fallen off the path that lived outside of that, like in some of the cities that I live in. You know, it's not exclusive. But what I will say is that their specific living conditions just fueled their anxieties, fueled their disorders, and only made their lives really bad and hard. And as a result, they just kept on going back to drugs. So whenever I talk about like this idea of like surrounding yourself with a better environment, surrounding yourself with better external tools, it's because of the same logic that I just kind of laid out when talking about my friend and the consequence of what drug addiction even spawns from, you know? And so you can fall into this kind of self-esteem insecurity addiction, you know? because you watched a video, somebody's talking shit about everything. You're like, yeah, I agree. And that makes you feel good because you feel like you're not alone. Other people agree that the world sucks and everybody sucks. Then you go on a forum and you see this post about, hey, like these people suck. And you're like, yeah, I knew it. Like these people suck. And then you apply for jobs and you can't get a job. And see, I knew it. Everything sucks. I mean, you're just fueling this validation. Where I know people who are on the opposite side of this. This is why the adage of half full or half empty, the glass half full, half empty, is such a solid adage, like the solid kind of philosophical thought of like objectively the glass is at a halfway mark. But some of us observe it as, oh, it's mostly full, or it's going to be continuously being filled, and others think that it's being emptied. Why that stands, even to this day, why it still latches onto people when they hear it. And I am making the attempt here to say that whether you approach this philosophy of like having arrogance or ego, I don't care. You can call it confidence. If it's just about building confidence, great. Do that then. I honestly do not care what you want to call this. I like to use terms like stoicism. Having stoicism is great instead of just having confidence. I think confidence is just part of it. Like you should have confidence. It's why I tend to tell people try not to worry about being motivated and inspired when you're trying to acquire a great skill, because motivation and inspiration are fickle. They can come and go. That's why I always encourage people to focus on stuff like discipline, patience, and diligence, because those are actual useful tools that will carry you over to where you need to go. And so whatever you want to call this stuff, this is what I'm trying to get at. It doesn't matter. But what I'm trying to address, and like I said, my last video really hit people with, is that they started recognizing how they are actually sabotaging themselves. They're only fueling these anxieties further and further. I don't think that they will ever go away, these anxieties, these feelings. I think you can only manage them. But to acknowledge that this is not going to help you, even if everything you say is true. Like everything sucks. All these things are suck. Like everything is in turmoil. Like is the game industry firing people at an unprecedented rate? This is true. Is AI making artwork that looks incredibly impressive and looks like it's going to replace us? Yes. This looks to be true. But I just got hit up yesterday from my buddy. Hey, did you sign the contract because we want you to work on these illustrations? I'm going to give you 8 of them. That just happened to me yesterday. I don't think that this is exclusive to me. I feel that I've earned these opportunities. And I feel anyone who's listening to this can also earn this too. This is why I always call it the great tragedy, because people believe that they can't. And it's really upsetting because I don't think that that's true. The industry is absolutely looking for someone like you guys. You just got to meet the bar. That's it. I am not saying that this shit is easy. This is not at all what I'm saying. Again, going back to people like Kobe Bryant, who talk about how great they are, how they're the greatest. They're also in the same breath saying, hey, I'm the first person in and the last person out when it comes to trading. And this was true. My buddy, he used to go to UCI, and he said he would see Kobe Bryant running like miles at like 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. You know? And you see an accompanied personality here. You have somebody who has this unbridled arrogance and confidence, accompanied with self-awareness to allow them to train to become that thing. Make it or fake it till you make it type vibes, right? This is not an accident. This is pretty consistently happening. And I don't think that any of you need to be like a Kobe Bryant, who's like unbridled personality. This is not at all what I'm trying to get at. But what I'm trying to say is like having some self-value and belief in yourself, and in having people that surround you that also believe in you and give you the gut check you need when you may overstep your confidence to kind of bring you back to reality and have that kind of good skepticism and that good critical perspective, you know, a balance of it, not just all negative and all positive, like good balance of both. You guys will make it, man. I promise. It's just it's very simple. It's just very hard to do for multiple reasons, not just from the personality perspective that I just talked about, but from just the straight up grit that it takes to do it, you know? So anyway, oh yeah, and this isn't frozen. I just stopped. I don't want to paint anymore. I think I finished the painting. Um, but listen, I believe in many of you guys, and like I said, this hit many of you so hard that I felt like I needed to do a bit of a follow up and clarification even further. Because what I don't want to make people think that you leave this video thinking, oh, AJ said I should be unnecessarily arrogant. It's like no. I think a bit of arrogance can help you because it will give you that undeserved self confidence to make you try things and do things that you wouldn't have if you were a lot more conservative. But then having the self-awareness to know that, okay, well, listen, I failed miserably. I was absolutely off the mark when I thought I was able to do these things, but now I can see it. Now I can see what I was wrong about. Let me try this again. Let me try it from a different angle, you know, and then rinse and repeat. But I'm gonna let you guys go. I am going to change the color of this painting because I can. And I like the idea that I painted this one color and it turned out being a different color scheme. I do like the more yellow. Yeah, let's just stick to more cool colors. Actually, I think this is like what it was originally, just more saturated. That's fine. Let's just do that then. Anyway, I gotta get out of here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed these videos, and I will talk to you guys on my next one. Cheers.